Hey, Amy.
Hi, Mary. Funny
Wow.
hearing you on the mic again.
Yeah. Where you been? um, yeah, we should probably talk about what brings us here because this is not hot take, right?
No, this is not hot take, although we will be occasionally bringing you a conversation between Mary and I about various things that we're keeping tabs on. This is a new podcast called Spill. And in this podcast, we're going to include some of the sort of newsy climate stuff that doesn't really fit into Drilled and some conversations with other writers and authors and things like that, and a monthly conversation with me and Mary too.
Exactly. Yeah, we should talk about maybe why we're doing this. So I know you are cranking out a ton of stuff with Drilled, and sometimes it doesn't quite fit into the Drilled feed,
Right.
or into the narrative arc of the series, but still important information and material that we want to share with people.
Right.
Um, and also, we're doing this because it's fun. You
It's
and I have so
fun.
much, exactly. You and I had so much more that we wanted to talk about. Like things are always developing and you kind of want to comment on it, but you don't really want to do it on Twitter because, good Lord, I don't want to do
Yeah.
anything on Twitter
Not
anymore.
anymore.
Um,
Thanks, Elon.
yeah, completely killed it dead. Killed it completely dead. But another reason this isn't a hot take is because we just don't have the bandwidth to do hot take anymore. Especially, I think at the end we were doing it weekly, but even before that we were doing it bi-weekly, and it was just
Yeah,
so
it was a
much work to have.
lot.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. And plus we are different people now.
Yeah.
I am way less online.
Yeah.
Um, I'm way less interested in thinking in public.
Yeah.
That just, it got so old because in order to think in public, you have to be able to learn in public. And that also
Right.
means other people need to be able to have grace in public, and people do not know how to do that. Like, you're just missing one little comma from your tweet and people are ready to like jump down your throats. And I don't have time for that shit. I got books, all right?
Yeah, it's not pleasant. It's
It's
not
not fun.
pleasant.
Yes.
Yes.
Um, but yeah, we are,
Plus,
it would be,
tell the people about your books, Mary. Books
oh,
plural.
yes, books plural. Yeah, so I released a children's book in February called The World Is Ours to Cherish. You can order that anywhere you order books. And I also am releasing a novel in a couple of weeks called Troubled Waters, which releases on May the 7th. And if you want to be my best friend, you will pre-order it.
Yes.
And if you just want to be my friend, you'll buy it when it comes out. And we'll be talking about that and like book tour dates and stuff when we get a little bit closer to the date. But yeah, that's happening. Um, but back to Spill. Another thing that is different about Spill is that we probably won't have as many guests. It will be less
Yeah.
formatted. As you can probably already tell from this intro, we're going to be all over the
Yeah.
place. We're going to have
Yeah,
fun.
but that's part
And
of it. Exactly. We want
yeah,
to be like, we want a place to be kind of like casual and talk about climate stuff because I still feel like that is not a thing that exists in abundance.
exactly.
Yeah.
And podcasts are one of the last frontiers where you can be casual about stuff. So
Yeah. And have the like, messy conversations sometimes. It's good.
mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
So with that, welcome to Spill. We're gonna
To
spill it.
Wow, Amy. Did you practice that?
Oh, so bad. So bad.
It was amazing, and I want more of it. I love this new era for you. I completely flipping the paradigm where you're coming in with the dad jokes. Love it.
Yes. Okay, so I feel like it's like extremely perfect that we are reconvening and launching this new, journey,
Venture. Yeah.
venture, yes, with our a first episode about Gaza, and especially Gaza and climate, Gaza and the climate movement, all of that stuff, because I just feel like
Yeah.
it has not been talked about enough. There's been more recently, that's great, but yeah, we've been texting each other a lot about it, so we figured.
I'm not really capable of talking about anything else, to tell you the complete truth.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah, I
fair.
don't know what else we could have talked about on the first episode.
Yeah.
You know what's crazy is like a couple of months ago, Joe Biden was like, "Oh, the Arab community will forget all about Gaza by the time November rolls around."
Did he say
Um,
that? Oh my
Oh
god.
yes, yes,
Whew.
yes, yes. He said that. But
Woof.
like, first of all, like there's so many things wrong with that. It's not just Arabs that care about it. Ain't nobody's memory that fucking short. I still wake up. We're 6 months into this. And I still wake up every morning like having to readjust to the fact that this is real.
Yeah.
And like you wake up and you're kind of like, all right, what do I have to do today? And then you remember there is an active genocide going on. Actually, there are multiple because there's also Congo and Sudan.
Yeah.
Um, and it's just it's depressing, and honestly I've said this before on Twitter, but nothing has made me feel more hopeless about our future, about climate change, about any of these things other than Gaza. No setback has made me feel more hopeless than this, because if we
Mhm.
cannot stand up for against genocide, if we can't put an end to genocide, I do not have faith that we're going to stop ecocide.
If we can't even agree that that's what it is, I mean, people, I can't I find it very shocking that like just calling it that is still seen as controversial. Like I just saw
Yeah.
something, there was just something that The Intercept published today where they got hold of a new, standards memo from the New York Times. This is a thing that happens at papers occasionally. They have a standards editor, and that person kind of looks at what kind of language the paper is using and
Mhm.
what sort of norms are in place and those kinds of things. And yeah, they were cautioning reporters against overly using, or really using at all, the word genocide to describe this, but it fits every piece of the definition. Like
Yeah,
I just,
and
yeah.
has from day one,
Hmm. Yeah.
like kind of has from day one of 1948, if we're being real about it.
Yeah.
Um, and so, yeah, the media has really failed in this moment. So, yeah, I know we were planning to talk about that. Why don't we just go ahead and go there?
Yeah.
So, yeah, let's talk about The Intercept has been doing some pretty hard hitting coverage on
Yeah.
Gaza, and one of the few places where you can reliably go for coverage that doesn't take Israel's claims at face value.
Right. Right.
Um, and yeah, like run stories from Palestinian journalists from the very beginning. They've actually been doing really good work. I listened to their podcast Intercepted,
Hmm.
and Deconstructed to like get a better perspective on this. But they're in turmoil.
Oh yeah. Yeah, they are. And I mean, it's interesting because in some ways the Gaza coverage has totally helped them to get individual readers donating and things like that, but it has made it tough for them to go to kind of institutional funders. So like sort of centrist liberal foundations. A lot of them, like, we had Celine Simon from Slow Factory on Drilled a couple weeks ago, and she
Hmm.
was saying too that they had all, like, basically lost all of their funders for being outspoken
Yeah.
on
Hmm.
Palestine. So there's this like very real way that kind of coverage is being censored. Um
And
and
also the people who talk about it being targeted by the Zionist
yes.
lobby.
Yes, totally. Yeah, like
Yeah.
actually, Nina Lakani at The Guardian had that happen. She just like tweeted
Hmm.
a few things and had just sort of like swarms of people going after her, and then also people calling up, her bosses and complaining and all of that kind of thing. Like there's a real concerted effort to, to go after organizations, individuals, media outlets that are not, um, in favor of what Israel is doing right now. And
Mhm.
there's a real, I just got back from the Society of Environmental Journalists conference, which was in Philadelphia, um, the first week of April. And like a couple days before I was going there, some of our reporters were like, "Did you guys get an invitation to this, you know, um, Israel and environmentalism breakfast?" And there was this sort of vaguely Zionist clean tech breakfast where there was a foundation that was kind of like pushing the narrative that I don't know, just really trying to sort of pander to climate journalists about how great Israel is. Now, this is not like a super new story. Israel has been a leader on clean tech stuff, and that's been a story that they've been trying to push for a long time.
Hmm.
However, people need to understand that like that stuff has also always been kind of part of the like national brand building for Israel as well. And like the like pushing of it in this particular moment is being done with a very specific kind of intention in mind. It's not like, look at the cool water tech we have. You know what I mean? It's like very much trying to kind of engender support from journalists in like this very subtle way. And they're offering like reporting trips to Israel for like
Oh
free
god, they
reporting
love to do
trips.
that.
Yeah, to
They
Israel.
love to offer a free fucking trip. And I
Yes.
can't hear that and not think about when Tiffany Haddish took her simple ass over there,
Oh my god, I've
and
been
was
so shocked to see. I'm like, what? Like, I also am just like, I don't understand why you have strong opinions on this in general. Like, I
she
don't get
just
it.
likes to be loud, and sometimes you're loud and wrong. And lately, that's
Mhm,
been her
mhm,
brand, is loud
mhm,
and wrong. But she also just like very easily bought. And I
mm.
know, I mean, I have more thoughts also on the clean tech thing and how
Yeah,
Israel's main contribution or a main way of dealing with climate change is around greenwashing. And that's kind of also like a big part of their myth making about their origin story, right? Like turning the desert into this oasis or whatever when it actually
totally.
like it's part of the fucking Fertile Crescent. What are you talking about? Like Palestine was
Mhm,
not a desert before all of
mhm,
this.
mhm,
So like, and it's not lost on me that so much of the debris that you see in Palestine is solar panels.
mhm. Yeah. Well, and
So
there's also we did a an interview with a climate activist in Palestine a few months ago, and she was talking about how common certain things are, like, cutting down trees that are in Palestinian villages and messing with
just straight
water
torching orchid
supplies.
growth.
And
Yeah.
yeah, exactly, exactly. Just stuff that is very, I don't know. I'm just, well, and especially like, at a time when they've been using white phosphorus, for example,
Yeah.
as part of, war tactics. I'm like, I don't really understand why the Society of Environmental Journalists would be like, yeah, like let's let a country that's doing that, have a whole event at our conference where they're talking about how environmentally friendly they are. You know what I mean? Like, I just, ugh. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. But getting back to the Intercept,
Yes.
they've been having problems before Gaza. And
Right.
I feel like the story is being framed in public as though they've gone so far out for Gaza and now that's creating all this internal strife and money problems.
Totally, totally. Yeah, like I feel like it's sort of subtly being used as this like um warning for everybody else. But and it's tough because it's like on the one hand, funders are pulling their money from a lot of different, organizations, people, whatever, that are being outspoken about Gaza. On the other hand, like, yeah, this is not, I mean, The Intercept has been in a spiral for like a couple years.
Mhm.
It's been basically since, a classic story, billionaire gets into the news business and then decides to like jump out, and
Mhm.
they've been kind of floundering ever since. So, Pierre Omidyar helped to found and fund The Intercept, and then in 2022 decided he didn't want to anymore, and
Mhm.
they have struggled to make things work ever since.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
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 Hmm. Oh, one
So
more thing on them though, I
mm,
do want to note is that they have also been kind of the key source of um, reporting and criticism on the New York Times coverage of
yes.
what Israel is doing in Gaza, including like exposing the fact that, they assigned 2 out of 3 reporters for a front page feature were people that had never, had very few bylines, period, had never written this kind of story before. Like, just so
Yep.
people, I don't know. I feel like that alone, I'm like, I don't think people understand like what kind of like cred you have to be assigned a front page feature for the New York Times. Like, it is highly, highly unusual for someone who has like no experience to
Mhm.
be given that kind of an assignment. And
But it
then
was essentially a filmmaker with no journalism experience, and her nephew, who before this had just been, like a food writer, um, paired up with a veteran New York Times journalist,
right,
who relied very, very heavily on those 2 people to
right,
do the
like on
research,
the
right?
ground reporting and stuff. So
Yeah.
the main person that's kind of been at the center of this is a woman named Anat Schwartz, and she actually has said on different podcasts and whatnot that like she felt like she was being asked to like tell a particular story, which that is just not ethical in
She also
journalism.
wanted to tell a particular
Oh,
story,
for
which you
sure.
can
Like,
definitely
I'm
tell,
not,
like
yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm not letting her off the hook, but it's like, it goes all the way to the top. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
they continued to work with her.
Oh my
And they
goodness.
continued to stand by that reporting until finally, I mean, there's still, like, these stories are still up,
Mhm.
about, and look, I don't know. I feel like it's like, I'm sure that like bad shit has gone down for sure,
Mhm.
but like the way that this was reported was so unethical and sloppy, and like they've had to retract a bunch of things. They've like finally, and honestly, none of that would have happened without the Intercepts reporting on it.
Exactly. Well, there was also, like, this viral Twitter thread from somebody whose avatar is a
Mhm.
cartoon character that was exposing a lot of it too, and then The Intercept, I believe that was the order of events, was a Twitter thread, and then The Intercept looked into it, and what was
Mhm.
wild to me about The Intercept story was that the way that they were able to debunk so much of it was shit that this woman has said in public on a podcast, that was in Hebrew,
Yes.
but, like, nobody really listened to it. Like, when she talked about her
Yeah.
research methods or her reporting methods for finding all this information, it was like basically people told her like, yeah, we didn't find any evidence of rape, and she was like, but in the culture people would say they weren't raped because of the stigma, so it's likely that people were raped and they didn't say it because of the cultural stigma. Girl,
Yeah.
girl,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, maybe, yeah, like, a lot of people don't report sexual assault, but that don't mean that sexual assault wasn't reported in this particular. What?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Like,
that's the
that's
thing,
leaps
is
and
it's like
bounds.
that
Leaps and
may,
bounds.
yeah, like that may be true in some cases. I don't want to like minimize the people that were genuinely harmed, but like that's not, you can't print that. Like there's
Yeah.
a, yeah, I don't know. You certainly
That
can't
does
print it.
happen, but that does not mean that that happened in this case, and therefore
Right.
going on the front page of the New York Times and saying so is fucking wild.
Also, just
Um,
like the burden of proof for stuff that you say even in like an op-ed in the New York Times is generally quite high. So like that is the thing to me that I'm just like, this is just such a total, like, they made decision after decision to completely set aside
exactly.
their standards to run with this story on the front page.
Exactly. And to double down on that shit multiple times, right? And that has like very real consequences. And I couldn't watch that happen without thinking about all the times that Black men in America have been accused of being sexual predators, and that being used to like raise entire towns, and fuel lynch mobs, right? Like that's
Yeah.
also happened, it's a long colonial trope as well.
Mhm. Mhm.
So yeah, like that there are consequences to that, and you need to be sure about it. And I want to just state that this was deliberate. This
Mhm.
wasn't an accident. This wasn't just like people being lazy and like going for with their best intentions and oops, we were wrong. No, they
Right.
did this on purpose because the New York Times has shown itself again and again to be in line with Zionist propaganda.
Yeah.
However, they're winning awards for it. You told me this the other day.
Yes. Yes, they have been named the recipient of a George Polk Award, which is a very prestigious newspaper award for their overall coverage of the Israel-Gaza war.
Shoot me.
I know. I'm gonna pull up like how it's described in this like awards announcement because I was like, what?
Did they mean to write The Intercept and it's just like a really bad misspelling?
Okay, so there are only 5 awards given. 3 of them went to the New York Times.
I gotta go. I gotta go. I just gotta go do something else. The fuck?
And let's see, what did they say? The award for foreign reporting goes to the staff of the New York Times for unsurpassed coverage of the war between Israel and Hamas. Yeah.
Can we do sound effects on this podcast?
Yes. Times
Can you
reporters
just put in a
used
primal scream?
Times reporters used first-hand accounts to demonstrate how brutal and well-planned the Hamas attack was and how vulnerable and ill-prepared Israel had been to defend itself despite access to a
Oh my
40-page
god!
Hamas battle plan. Yeah. Then, relying
Oh my
on
god!
reports from longtime stringers in Gaza, as well as imagery developed by its visual investigations team, the paper documented the unprecedented extent of the Israeli bombardment of Gaza and its impact on civilians.
That's the way to put it. That's the way to put it. Unprecedented bombardment. It is
Yeah.
one of the most advanced armies in the world. You're gonna tell me it was vulnerable and defenseless? Fuck out of here.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Um yeah, so that's the thing. I mean, that's like I think it's been I don't think I was aware of just how embedded kind of pro-Israel sentiment is in the US in general, and the media in
Mm.
particular, in journalism. Like it's been like very, very, very like, wow, okay. Like,
Oh no, it's very deep. It is extremely deep. And I mean, the tide I feel is turning just because ain't but so much passive voice you can use to try to cover up this shit. Like this is
it's been
just
going on
so
for so
blatant.
long. And then I do feel
Yeah.
like, the famine in particular is just like, come on, even like my mom, who is not she doesn't really like keep up on politics, and tends to be quite like a moderate Democrat who loves Joe Biden. The
Bless
other
her
day I was
heart.
talking to her and she was like, why is Joe Biden bombing babies? I was like,
Yeah.
well, yeah. And then she
And I
said, what did
feel,
she say?
yeah, go ahead.
She was like, I don't understand why we're paying for this. And I was like, yeah. And she's like, and also it's just disturbing, like the extent of it. And I said, yeah. And then she said, and this is where I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of like upset emails from Democrats, but I do feel like this is like, I know it's, a sample size of one, but I feel like this is how a lot of not just like quote unquote radical progressives feel. Like my mom is anything but. She goes, if it's between Trump and Biden, I'm not voting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's wild that
she's saying
she's
that.
making that statement. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I haven't met your mom, but I feel like I know her, and she is very much seems like a like to the right of MSNBC.
Oh yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah. Yeah, she's
And
like, yeah, like I said, she has actually like been she's a huge Biden fan because on top of the fact that she loves old white men, she also is Catholic and was like super jazzed about him being the Catholic president.
and the Pope has been damn clear about where he stands in this war. So let's go back a little bit from span out from the media and the way that they've been dealing with it. One of the
Mhm.
misunderstandings I feel like I'm seeing a lot is people trying to boil this down to like this is another war for oil. And
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, fortunately, this isn't that big of a misconception, but I do see it pop up a lot, and that might be just
Mhm.
because of who I am, what I talk about in public. I get
Yeah.
people in my comments all the time saying, like, it's just about the oil. They're trying to get to the oil. And I just want to say, like, first of all, it might sound like Gaza has a lot of oil, but in the grand scheme of things, it's really not that much oil and not
Mhm.
enough oil for all of this. And
Well, and
secondly,
also like this has been
Israel.
going on since, since Israel was formed. I mean, it's like it's not new.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They don't have to go to this scale of war to take anything from the Palestinians, which is fucked
Mm-mm.
up and probably why we all should have been this charged up about Palestine since, 1948, like
Yeah.
literally since my mama was born.
Yeah.
But like that's not what we're seeing, and there's more to that, right, Amy?
Yeah, I mean, the I feel like when I have seen climate people or climate media talk about Gaza, it is often in this framework of like, oh,
Hmm.
it's for oil. There has been some reporting on, oh, it's for gas because there is quite a bit of natural gas reserves offshore
Yeah.
Gaza, but even there, it's like, yeah, it's a lot, but like Israel has more within its like land borders onshore, so it doesn't have like a huge reason to go to war to get deep water offshore gas, which is like expensive and hard to get to,
They
so
also can
like
just take it.
that's
Like they
right, they
control
can't.
their
In fact, like
water.
they had been blocking um Palestine from developing that resource for decades,
Mm.
and actually had just okayed it, I think, a few months prior. I mean, there's definitely some stuff there. Like they gave out, I think it was 12 leases to different companies that want to drill offshore, including, Chevron, BP, any, like all of these companies. ADNOC, actually, that was an interesting one because it's fairly recent, just in the last few years, that Israel has kind of normalized diplomatic relations with the United Arab Emirates. And so they were doing some deals with ADNOC, which is the Abu Dhabi National Oil Company. Um,
Uh,
but but those folks have been, calling for an immediate ceasefire, and so that's unlikely to go anywhere. So anyway, yes, like there is some oil and gas stuff going on. We're not saying it's absolutely nothing. Is it driving what's going on here? No. Like, I'm
yeah.
sorry, I just don't think so.
It's very clearly not, right? Because they've been.
It's yeah. It's like, yeah, this is like the same war over territory period and ideology and racial hatred and all kinds of other things that has been the case for a long time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And like, are there some oil and gas benefits too? Sure.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but like that doesn't make it an oil war.
Yeah, it's like a cherry on top.
It certainly has a climate impact though.
Yeah.
Like, we can definitely talk about the environmental and climate impacts, because those are very real.
How does PwC take your company to the leading edge? They bring the sharpest minds in tech to your team, so you can bring the ideas that will transform your business. They're passionate about your industry, so you can walk into any room with every advantage. And they're with you every step of the way, so you can know you're headed in the right direction. PwC builds for what's next, so you can get there now. Get started at pwc.com/us/leading edge.
My day kicks off with a refreshing Celsius energy drink, then straight to the gym. Pre-K pickup, back home to meal prep. Time for my fire station shift. One more Celsius, gotta keep the lights on. When the 3-alarm hits, I'm ready. Celsius. Live, fit, go. Grab a cold, refreshing Celsius at your local retailer or locate now at Celsius.com.
Learning through play starts with Lego Duplo. With Lego Duplo, toddlers can develop real-life skills while having fun with colorful bricks made just for them. Large, easy to grip, and safe to explore. When children express themselves with Lego Duplo, they build patience, problem-solving, and empathy. See your child learn perseverance and self-expression with everything they imagine and create. Visit lego.com/preschool to learn more.
When I look at what's going on in Palestine, it really kind of looks like what happens when you see colonialism and climate change and the fossil fuel industry all operating at the exact same time. And I feel like
Mm-hmm.
in throughout
Mm-hmm.
most of history, that's been more of a gradual type of thing, like where you don't get you don't get climate change without colonialism. That's true, but I don't necessarily think that when people were doing the beginnings of colonialism, they were thinking about getting oil. They didn't know it was there. It was kind of like a happy accident on their part,
Yeah.
So it was
Yeah.
like it was a
Yeah.
lot less intentional, almost like a little bit um Mr. Magoo meets Hitler type of thing. So when you look at Gaza, it's like they know the oil is there, they know climate change exists, and they're doing colonialism all at the same time. So it's just like
Mm.
incredibly, like, it's hard to look at, but we have to look at it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
but yeah, it also, like, the oil majors are involved in this, right? Like, you don't get a war like this without fossil fuels, right? Like, you gotta fuel the
Right.
machinery and everything. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the BDS movement and the boycott of Chevron.
Yeah, Chevron has been sort of the number one foreign oil company in Israel since 2020, and there's been pretty active moves to boycott them for that reason.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much ever since then, and then like some renewed momentum behind that this year too, related to what they're doing in Gaza.
Yeah, and probably should spell out what BDS stands for. BDS is boycott, divestment, and sanctions, and it's a movement that's been going on for a while in support of Palestinian resistance. So not new, not something that was created because of this assault on Gaza. It's been going on for quite a while, but been getting a lot more
Right.
attention, obviously, because of what's going on. You probably heard about it in terms of McDonald's and Starbucks, and some of the other big
Mm-hmm.
companies. Um, and Chevron, like you were saying, has been a target, for a little while. It's been a little bit more. I've been seeing more about it. And one of the things that was exciting was I saw that this big union of app-based couriers, like Uber drivers, et cetera. Yeah.
Yeah, that was interesting.
Yeah. So they represent over 27 countries. I didn't see the United States listed, but lots of other countries in like Latin America and Asia. And they've pledged to boycott Chevron and Texaco gas stations, which is pretty cool because you think about it, right? Like in climate, we talk about like this isn't about consumers, et cetera, et cetera. Like it's almost impossible to like boycott quote unquote fossil fuels, but this is an
Mhm.
interesting way to target a specific one. And
Yeah,
yeah, all of them suck, right? Like BP is in bed with
of
Israel, Shell
course.
is in bed with Israel. All of them really, really suck.
Yeah.
Chevron seems to be one of the worst ones, though.
In the same way that, like, I feel like people forget that like these companies are, supporting like awful dictators all over the world too. They don't give a fuck. Like there's this amazing quote from there's a book called Private
Hmm.
Empire about Exxon that Steve Call of the New Yorker wrote like a while ago, where he talks about this, how these companies are like, sort of more powerful than any one country, that they are these like private empires, doing stuff for their own benefit and nothing else
Yeah.
really. And he has this scene in it where an oil exec, like an Exxon executive, is being asked, why they're supporting this like murderous dictator in Equatorial Guinea, and his answer is like, we're an oil company, not the Red Cross. Like, we're not here to bring democracy. We're
Yikes.
here to like get oil and make money, you know?
Yeah.
or like, there's another part too where uh he's at a conference, and someone, it's like an oil industry conference, and someone asks Lee Raymond, who was the CEO of Exxon at that time, would you consider building out more refineries in the US to help with stabilizing gas prices? This was like in the 80s when there was a lot of fluctuation in gas prices. And he said, and Lee Raymond said, why would I do that? And the guy said, well, to help Americans with stable fuel
He was like,
supply.
fuck them.
He was like, I'm not an American company. I'm an oil company. Like, I'm not here to like help America or Americans or like the US. And I'm like, man, people really need to remember that.
Wow. Because that also reminds me of when Chevron was crying out for democracy after January the 6th. You remember that shit?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And actually, like when Russia invaded Ukraine, and again when Israel started bombing Gaza, you immediately see this push from the fossil fuel industry to use that to say, oh, like this is going to impact energy security. We better drill more oil and
Mm.
gas.
Because that's
Which,
always the
like,
solution.
sure. Always, yeah. It's like they never let a good war go to waste.
Exactly.
Um,
They love a war.
so
They
yeah,
love a
the
drill.
API, totally. The American Petroleum Institute started running uh, like a 10 million plus dollar campaign, kind of, making everybody scared about energy security and how unstable the world is, and all of that. That was like their big response to Gaza.
Mm.
And of course, they were all worried about tankers getting through when people in Yemen were blocking the passageway there,
Hmm.
in um, in solidarity with Palestine as well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And just a quick shout out to the protesters in New Orleans who protested the French Quarter Festival, which was brought to you by Chevron, like so many of the uh
what about Jazz Fest and Shell right now, right?
well,
Like,
that
when
happens in a
was that
couple of
recently
weeks,
too?
so I'm sure people will
Oh,
be
a couple of
protesting that.
weeks.
I mean, Chevron
Eesh.
obviously is the one that's been named by BDS, so I think they went for that first. But like, there's
Mm,
so many things here. We've talked
interesting.
about this on Hot Take before. That there's so many things in New Orleans that are brought to you by the fossil fuel industry. Um, in cities like New Orleans, like the Aquarium of the Americas is brought to you, I believe, by Chevron. You'll see the police.
Mm-hmm.
You did a story a while back, like the police force will be brought to you by BP or
Oh
Chevron or
yeah.
somebody. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, no, there were marches and like musicians for Palestine. Actually, like the Palestinian resistance movement in New Orleans has been extremely strong. There's a
Mm-hmm.
very large Palestinian community here. Um,
Yeah, I never knew that until you told me that. That's really
yeah,
interesting.
so it's been obviously, I hate that they have to do this type of organizing amid a genocide. Like people are losing actual family members. There's a woman from New Orleans who was in Palestine and arrested by, well, abducted, we should say, by the IDF. I don't know if she's out yet.
Mm-hmm.
There was the first American citizen who was killed during this time period in the West Bank. Tawfiq was from New Orleans. I'm very tempted to keep saying the West Bank because the Palestinian community in New Orleans is based in the West Bank mostly. But if I say the West
That's
Bank in
funny.
this scenario, people will think I'm talking about the West Bank of Palestine. And in this scenario, I am
Right.
because both of these people were in the West Bank in Palestine when they were abducted. They're also from the
Mm-hmm.
West Bank in New Orleans. So, um, yeah.
Wow. I do just want to kind of talk a little bit about the environmental and climate
Yes.
impacts of the war as well. Oh, this was an interesting thing I saw too. Like I saw some climate people kind of like fighting amongst themselves about whether you should or shouldn't talk about the emissions. Like some people saw it as being like, oh well, that's like downplaying
Oh my
the
God.
the impact on people dying and like, all of that. And then other
Oh,
people were like, we can walk and chew gum at the same time. Like we can talk about both,
you know what that reminds
um
me of is the summer of 2020 when climate folks were like, "Okay, we
yes,
need climate change to take a back seat to the Black Lives Matter movement." I'm
to
like, "It's
COVID.
part of it."
Oh,
Oh,
I
to
thought you were gonna
COVID.
say COVID because it was that too.
Yeah, to COVID. And like
Yes,
we're
yes.
always so quick to be like, "All right, let's put the climate change stuff on the back burner so we can focus on this other thing." But then at the same time we'll
Mhm,
turn around and say, "It's
mhm.
an intersectional issue." Do you understand that? Do you
Yeah.
actually believe that? Because you're
Yes.
so quick to want to put climate change on the back burner. But also, honestly, more of what I've seen in the climate space and that I'm actually more disgusted by is people just
Mm.
acting like they can ignore it,
Yeah.
just ignore it
Yeah.
completely and just keep talking about climate change on its own. Like I'd rather you put climate change on the back burner and talk about Gaza, because if we're solving for
Mhm.
Gaza, we are solving for climate change. But at the same
Mhm.
time, like I'm deeply disgusted by like big figureheads and big into like very large, well-funded organizations acting like the shit isn't even happening. That's more
It
disgusting to
is
me.
really
Yeah.
gross. Especially because, like, I don't know, when I think about it, I'm kind of like, look, if anyone understands, you know, kind of all the ins and outs of an issue being politicized when it doesn't really need to be, it's people who have some awareness of the climate issue, people who work on this issue. And so, like, the fact that people can't, I don't know, just kind of be like, it's wrong to starve people and bomb civilians.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's just so odd to me. Or yeah, just pretend it's not happening at all when, like, you know,
Right.
we're seeing this horrific footage every day and like these horrific stats about the extent of not even just starvation, but like the sanitation conditions, the access to clean water. Like it's just not
Like it's
okay
apartheid
in
and
any
right now it's
way.
a genocide. So I'm also deeply disgusted because these exact same like people and organizations were so full-throated and couldn't shut the fuck up during the quote unquote racial reckoning of 2020. Then it's all Black Lives Matter, everything, right? Like all in this house
Yeah.
we believe and land back and da da da. You want to be all radical and shit when it looked like the foundations were going to fund you for that. But now that it's actually risky, now that you actually might lose something, now you want to shut the fuck up and stay in your lane. Okay. Then I need you to like as full-throated and as vocal as you were in the summer of 2020, I need you to be just as loud about how you're backtracking right now. Be just as explicit about actually we didn't mean none of that shit. We're not anti-racist. We're not radical. We're not intersectional. Because if you can stay silent in the face of this, you're not any of those things. So take all of those fucking statements down. And not only that, I need you to come out and say, we're not talking about this because we're a bitch. Just say it. Just say it. Because it's not, we all heard you in the summer of 2020. We all heard the shit you talked. So if you're not going to back it up now, take it back. Like actively take it back. Just like put up a statement, we're bitch made.
I have heard so many stories from people who work inside organizations like this, or even like are just working sort of like in alliances with other people on climate stuff, that like they're being told, you know, like stay in your lane, don't say anything, we're not going to say anything. I just, it's very...
Yeah, as someone who once worked at an environmental organization, I'm going to plead the fifth and not be specific. But I will say that shouldn't be allowed. It shouldn't be allowed. Like, if you're not going to be morally consistent, at least be immorally consistent.
Right. Right.
So, yeah, like as an editor, as like a communicator, I cannot stand inconsistency. Like the narrative needs to make sense, right? And your narrative, your myth making about who you are needs to be consistent.
Right.
Otherwise, like how stupid do you think the rest of us are?
Right.
But going back to that, like this idea, this like rationality that this isn't related to climate change is absolute and total bullshit.
Totally. I wanna read you a line from a story that Nina Lakhani at The Guardian wrote about.
I love it when you read to me.
Yes, about the emissions from this. And the headline is "Emissions from Israel's war in Gaza have immense effect on climate catastrophe." And she writes, first, the planet warming emissions generated during the first 2 months of the war in Gaza were greater than the annual carbon footprint of more than 20 of the world's most climate vulnerable nations. Over 281,000 metric tons of carbon dioxide were estimated to have been generated in the first 60 days of the war, attributable to Israel's aerial bombardment and ground invasion of Gaza. So it says the climate cost of the first 60 days of Israel's military response was equivalent to burning at least 150,000 tons of coal. So yeah, like even just in like really basic terms.
And you said the first 2 months.
Yeah, just the first 2 months, and it's now been 6 months, right? So like, and it hasn't died down. So like, you know, that is an ongoing impact as well. And like, I feel like that's something that's really struck me too in the face of like all these organizations being silent and kind of being like, oh, it's not our place and this and that and the other. Like I'm also not seeing them talk about specific climate aspects to this. You know, it's like, look, there are actually a lot of on ramps for you if you feel like, you know, you're scared to weigh in on geopolitical stuff or whatever. Like you could at least talk about emissions or the environmental impact of white phosphorus, or like you know, kind of what's been going on the environment side of things as part of this war too, with like, yeah, orchards being burned down, trees being cut down, water being messed with in a place where water
Mhm.
is like really a scarce resource. um
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
there's like all
I mean,
kinds of
also,
stuff.
the manufacturing and shipping of bombs causes a shit ton of
Yes.
climate emissions, right?
Yeah.
Like, and then there's the detonation of the bombs that causes a ton of climate emissions, but also
Hmm.
blowing up a building that releases a ton of carbon
Oh,
too.
yeah, totally.
And
And
so does
particulate
blowing up a
matter and
tree.
like, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So like
Yeah.
there's the climate impact, there's the environmental impact, and those are just the things we know of because shit is happening now that kind of has never happened before.
Right.
It kind of reminds me of, I remember there was this study that was released, I want to say either late 2018 or early 2019, that showed that the genocide of indigenous Americans actually
Yeah.
changed the climate and set off this like long cooling period because so many people
Yeah.
murdered at one time.
Yeah.
And people were like, oh my God, that had a climate impact. Yeah, girl, we're part of the environment. We shouldn't
Yeah.
be doing this shit. So, like,
Yeah.
what type of climate environment, what sort of environmental impact is this going to have? Right. And there's also
Mhm.
like, we've said in climate circles that land back is a climate solution. Land back
Right.
meaning giving land back to indigenous people because they're the best stewards of the land.
Mhm.
Uh, well, that would be the Palestinians.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, like, not only not giving them their land back, but murdering them and
Yeah.
murdering with them their indigenous wisdom of how to care for this land and shooting down white phosphorus, which makes land pretty much unlivable.
Yeah. Yeah.
I, what are we doing here?
Mhm.
Like, I don't know how you look at that as someone who claims to care about climate change and is like, woof, not my issue,
Totally. Totally. Yes. Yeah, and you're right,
right?
especially after spending all this time being like, no, no, we're intersectional now. I started to see a backpedaling on that even before this, like
Mhm.
where it's in this
Oh,
really
for sure.
weird way. Yeah, like I started to see people being like, "Oh no, climate has been dragged into the culture war." And then the solution to that for a lot of people was we shouldn't talk about all these other issues that don't that aren't like obviously connected to climate, right? And I'm like, "No, that's not
Mhm.
like um that's cute that you think that you get to decide whether you're in or out of the culture war. Like that's not how it
Yeah.
works. Like
Yeah.
you get tagged in. That's it.
Yeah.
Like, that's it,
Yeah.
you know?
And it's
And then
also like
and it's like the entire reason that they were doing that is because it was actually like it's a lot scarier for various like powers that be if the climate movement is intersectional because that makes it larger and more powerful and more widespread. So, like,
right.
attacking that intersectionality makes a lot of sense from those guys. Backpedaling on it makes no sense at all. Uh,
Yeah, I love how so many, especially white guys, are like, I know what we'll do. What we did before that didn't fucking work.
yeah,
like it's a novel idea. We're gonna talk
yeah.
about climate change as just climate change. We're gonna stay above the fray, and we're gonna
Mm-hmm.
like not
Mm-hmm.
get mired down in politics and identity politics or whatever, or like,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
and we're gonna like reward Biden with praise when he does a good thing, and that'll encourage him to do more good things. Shut the fuck. Y'all have done that forever.
Yeah.
And it didn't work.
Yeah.
Right. And
Exactly.
they've like abandoned their darling, Greta Thunberg, because she's been pretty vocal for
She's
Palestine.
starting to get pretty radical in her
Yeah.
old age here. I like it.
Her old age. What is
Yeah.
she, like 20?
She's like 22 now. She's
Yeah.
but yeah. Yeah, no, she's like and also just like she's like really showing up. Um
Yeah, no, she's with the shits. And they are
which I'm
just
like,
like, oh, they
yes.
used to like, that used to be their fucking avatar. They used to adore Greta
Mhm.
Thunberg. I ain't seeing none of them say shit about Greta Thunberg lately.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. That's true. They're
That's so
all
funny. They threw their favorite white girl away. Like, and if they'll do that, what'll they do?
It's true.
You know?
It's so true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
I feel like they threw their favorite white girl away is a good note to end.
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, this will not be the last time we talk about Gaza, because I think I will probably be talking about this for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And I think a good note to end on is free Palestine.